Hey friends, this is Mrs. Volpe from our Half Acre Homestead. I have company coming, so I'm going to make something that we all like. I don't know anybody who doesn't like bagels. So I'm going to make bagels so that I have some for breakfast, as part of the breakfast when my company comes. Now, before I get into the flour and everything, let's see how hot our water is. It's a little too hot for the yeast just yet, but we're going to put a tablespoon of sugar in there. And we're going to give it a stir. We're going to let that sugar dissolve and let that cool down a little bit. And what we're going to need for our bagels, I'm going off the beaten path a little bit. I'm using 4 cups or 4.5 cups of unbleached flour and 4.5 cups of whole wheat. And I think I need another half a cup there. There we go. And here's our 4.5 cups. Now this is a double recipe. That's why you see me dividing the flour so evenly. And we're going to need the sugar dissolved in our water. We have 3 cups of water. And we're just going to put in 2 coffee scoops or 2 tablespoons roughly of yeast. And we're going to give that a stir. I'm just going to start mixing my dough. This is not instant yeast, folks. Get that out of the way, and we'll just take our whisk and we'll just start whisking. And we're just going to mix this in, going from the sides inward until it gets doughy enough for me to pour out onto the table. And then we just have to flour it down. Now, Nora, I could have cheated. I could have done the dough first in my bread maker. But I'm one of those people who thinks it's really important you should know how to do things without machinery first. Then if you want to cheat and use the machinery, you go ahead. And I have never made bagels before. So what I want to do is I want to make bagels traditionally first. I'm already starting to knead it, and we've got a somewhat lump of dough which I'm just going to pick up. It's still kind of runny, but I'm going to pick it up in my hand, and then I'm just going to dump this flour part down here. There we go. And now we'll just knead our dough until it's the way we want it. Once this is well smooth and elastic, we will divide it into balls. And I'm going to get my cookie sheet that they're going to rise on. All right? We'll be right back. Here we have our supersized baking sheet. And this is parchment paper that I used for peanut butter cookies. And I just washed them and wrung them out and hung them up on a cupboard door, and they were fine. Yes, that's my clock. So we have a log of our bagel dough. And I'm just going to cut it right down the center. Now if I was smart and bakery style, I would probably use a scale and weigh each ball individually. But you know what? I'm not into that. Now let's take one log and make sure it's pretty even. And then we're going to cut it in 4. It might be a bit much. There we go. 2, 4. Let's get this one organized as well so I don't forget what I'm doing here. Okay, now we're going to cut these again. Now apparently there are 2 ways you can roll a bagel, but right now we're just going to roll these into balls. We're just going to let these rest for about 10 minutes. Now I'm going to go and put my pot of water on to boil. So let's go do that. Okay, here's my pot of water that we're going to boil our bagels in. Obviously not at the same time. We're going to put that on to boil while our dough is resting. And I am going to add a dollop of molasses. Now they say to add sugar, but there's something about molasses. And I'm just going to put about a tablespoon in that water, and that's what we're going to boil our bagels in. Okay, our bagel dough has rested at about 5 minutes. And what we're going to do, make a dough ball. And just poke your finger in it. And then, actually that works really well. But you want a fairly big hole, because you want your bagel to have a hole, right? And also, it helps it to cook, okay? Because you are going to be boiling them first. So you just kind of, and then you work 2 fingers in. And there you go, there's a bagel. And we'll put that to rise. There we go, there's another one. Now at this point, they're just bread, okay? A heavy bread, but bread. There's our dough ball. We're just going to stick our thumb through there. And we'll get 2 fingers in there. You want a fairly big hole, because remember, these are going to rise, and they're also going to swell with cooking. That's a pretty darn good bagel for a first timer, if you ask me. There we go. Once you start to boil these 1 or 2 at a time, and then put them on your cookie sheet, is when you should be preheating your oven at 375 degrees. All right, we'll be back when I have these all rolled and are ready to boil. Okay, here's our 12 bagels. It worked out, that recipe must have been for 6. So we're just going to cover these and let them rise for 20 minutes, and then we'll be back. Okay, our water is just about boiling, and we're going to start by boiling our first 2 bagels. One in there like that, one in there like that, and we're just going to let them boil for about 1.5 minutes. Now our bagels are floating, and we're just going to turn them over very, very gently in the water, in the molasses water, that is. And I've set my oven, turned my oven on. You want to turn your oven on to between 350 and 375. On this plate I have sesame seeds, flax seeds, and raw sunflower seeds. And when these come out of the water, I'm just going to dip them in it before I set them on the tray to bake. We're just going to do that. And then pick it up and flip it over onto the pan. And while that's sitting there, I'm going to grab 2 more bagels for the pot, and we will continue. I may have to turn this pot down just a hair. We want it boiling, but we don't want it boiling over. And there's our other bagel. All right, we'll be back when these are all boiled and ready to go in the oven. Here we are, folks. There's our bagels ready to go out in the oven. Now these are going to go into a 375 degree oven for 25 to 30 minutes. So let's get these in the oven. And let's set the timer for 30 minutes, and we'll be back when this sings. Okay, while my multigrain bagels are baking, I have in here 1.5 cups of warm water, a tablespoon of yeast, a tablespoon of sugar, 4 cups of unbleached flour, and a 1/4 cup of my home dehydrated crushed onion, dehydrated onions and dehydrated green onions, and I've crushed them up and I put them in there with a teaspoon of salt. Now I'm going to put this in my bread maker and let it make it to dough, and then I will do the rest by hand, and we'll be back. Okay, as you know, I cheated and I used the bread maker just to mix the dough because my hands get a little worse off every year. But anyway, I'm showing you both ways. Now I have some more rising. Like I said, I have company coming, so I want to make sure that I have plenty of good food, that I don't have to spend my whole time while we're visiting in the kitchen. There we go. Now these are the onion bagels. And oh, look at that. So I'm going to get these rising, get my other dough. I have another batch in the bread maker just about ready for flour. And when these come out of the boiling water, I am going to sprinkle some more dehydrated crushed onion pieces and green onion just for aesthetics before they go in the oven. All right, we will be back when these are done rising and I've picked my son up from work. Alrighty, now while we're waiting for the second batch of onion bagels to mix, I'm going to mix my topping. These are my home dehydrated onions. These are my green onions, and these are my regular dehydrated onions. Now, I'm not going to put them in the coffee grinder because that would grind them up too fine. And I want that nice textured look on the top of the bagel. But I don't want them too big because I don't want them to scorch either. So we're just making this small enough that we can sprinkle it on with a spoon on each bagel as it comes out of the boiling water. There's our multi-grain bagels, fresh out of the oven, folks. Look at that. Isn't that just lovely? Okay, there's our onion bagels, ready to be boiled and baked as soon as they rise. Now, let's put our other bagels to cool before we go and pick up Briar from work. Aren't these just beautiful? Look at these. Just gorgeous. We're just going to, let me move these away. It's hard to believe the trays that I used at the bakery that were much bigger. All right, well, let's put these to cool. I have a feeling, folks, that we're going to have bagels for supper because my husband isn't going to wait for breakfast. Aren't they beautiful? All right, we'll see you guys in about an hour and a half. Now, I've got my water on for my onion bagels. And this time, instead of molasses, I'm going to put honey. Honey and onion goes really nice together. Very much like honey garlic sauce, or if you think about it. These bagels have risen a lot puffier. I think it's because there is no whole wheat flour in these ones. So as the water heats up, I'm just going to make my hole a little bigger so that I can, oops, I don't want to knock the puff down. I just want to make sure there's a hole, or it wouldn't be a bagel, now would it? These are jumbo bagels. Redone and let rise a little bit longer. We're going to do a second rising, folks. Okay, we're ready to start boiling our onion bagels. And I didn't really have to let them rise twice. I just had to be a little more careful about handling them because they're quite soft. And they are much bigger than the whole wheat ones. So we'll just bring these to a boil. And here we've got our green and yellow onion all ground up and ready to go. These ones, if you notice, they're rising to the top of the water much, much faster. Like I said, the first batch was made with whole wheat flour and unbleached flour. Anyway, this batch is just made with unbleached flour, so they're a lot lighter. Let's make sure our oven is turned on. All right, 2 minutes. Let's turn you over. We'll turn you over. And you can see, I don't know how well you can see, but you can see the nice flecks of green onion in there. And all right, there's bagel number one. We're going to put them on here. Bagel number 2. Let's do that. Let's get a couple more in there. And we're just going to sprinkle this green and yellow onion just a little bit on the top of each bagel, because remember, we have put some in. We just want a little bit of decoration plus flavor. Oh God, I wish you could smell these. There we go. And we will be back when these go in the oven. And here they are, folks, our wonderfully lovely onion bagels. And I think I'm going to need another tray because these ones are really big. We'll be right back. Okay, folks, onion bagels are done. Multigrain bagels are done. And rather than wait for Papa to come home, I'm going to show you how I eat my bagels. I'm going to take a homemade sliced dill pickle. It would be better if I used a fork, okay? These are my homemade sandwich pickles. And we're just going to put a nice dollop of cottage cheese on there. I have been waiting all day for this. You can buy bagels wherever you want, but I'll tell you, here we go. Bagels. I've never made them before. So easy to make. So delicious. So healthy. You'll never look back. This is the Mrs. Wolfie from our half-acre homestead saying, I'm going to eat my lunch.